The humid nights in Barcelona are perfect for hiding secrets, but they are even better for planning a cold and calculated retribution. Elena thought the distance between us was a shield that would protect her double life from my eyes. She is about to learn that when you steal a man's future, you lose the right to your own. My name is Dominic, and for the last 2 years, I was the architect of a life that did not exist. I worked 34 years to build a reputation and a career only to have it treated like a disposable plaything by a woman who managed her lies as efficiently as she managed a cabin crew. The injustice of her betrayal is a debt that she cannot afford to pay, but I will make sure she spends the rest of her life trying. The salt air of the Mediterranean drifted through the open windows of the apartment in the Bourne district, where I sat staring at a screen that confirmed my status as a secondary character in her story. Elena was 29, and she moved through the world with the effortless grace of someone who never had to answer for her actions. She was a flight attendant, which made the long-distance relationship a game of time zones and flight paths that she controlled with surgical precision. I believed her when she said the distance was just a temporary hurdle. I believed her when she said her heart was with me even when her body was halfway across the globe. The first shadow of the truth appeared on a Tuesday night when a male colleague asked her out for late-night drinks, and she accepted without mentioning a single word to me. She moved through the city of her layover like a ghost while I waited for a call that never came. I only discovered the meeting days later by asking specific questions that exposed the inconsistencies in her narrative. It was like watching a masterclass in gaslighting as she tried to explain away why a stranger she barely knew was suddenly a priority for her midnight hours. She claimed they had met once, months ago, and exchanged numbers, but she insisted it was nothing to worry about because he had canceled at the last minute. The intent to deceive was already there, and the failure of the meeting did not erase the betrayal of the plan. I told her that trust was the only thing keeping us together across the thousands of miles, but she looked at me through a screen and promised an honesty she never intended to deliver. The second wave of the storm hit when I caught her in a lie about a man she claimed was just a friend. She said she was not hanging out with him anymore and that he was a relic of a life she had left behind. After catching her in several contradictions and pressing for the reality of her past, I found out that she had been having sex with this man for a significant period before meeting me. The sting of the physical past was nothing compared to the revelation that he was and still is a married man. She claimed she was ashamed and that she did not know he was married at the time, but the lie had been told to my face for months. I told her that the past was the past, but that lying in the present was a poison that would eventually kill us both. I kept my eyes wide open after that, and the city of Barcelona became a backdrop for my silent observation as I waited for the next crack in the facade. 2 months later, we had another talk about transparency and the absolute necessity of being honest in a relationship where we could not see each other every day. Elena nodded and cried and promised that I was the only man who mattered. Literally 2 days after that conversation, she was back to texting the married man. She was not just talking to him, but she was providing him with financial favors at our expense. Elena had 10 free return flights per year to gift to friends and family, and she had promised every single one of them to me so that the distance between us would not be a financial burden. She used that promise to keep me close while she was secretly planning to give my seat away to the man who was already cheating on his own wife. I found the evidence while preparing for my own flight back to see her. I saw a name on the confirmation screen that made my blood turn to ice. Julian Vance. The married man from her past was flying on a ticket that she had promised was mine. She had been coordinating texts and calls with him to set up this travel while telling me she loved me. When I confronted her, she did not apologize, but instead she grew defensive and minimized the entire betrayal. She said he just asked for a favor and that it was just a ticket and that I was overreacting to a minor incident. She failed to realize that the ticket was not the problem, but the systematic removal of my importance in her life was the crime. I broke up with her on the spot.
I watched her face through the digital window and saw the shock of a woman who thought she could manipulate any situation to her advantage. She did not think I had the balls to walk away. She tried to call it a "sorry I got caught" moment, rather than a sincere apology. The trust was gone for good, and I knew that every future interaction would be haunted by the question of what else she was hiding. A month of silence followed until she texted me to ask if I still believed I had made the right decision. I told her she should ask herself if she made the right decision by lying and hiding her interactions with a man she claimed to have moved on from. Now the grief has been replaced by a cold and focused energy. I am no longer the victim of her long-distance games. I am a researcher and a strategist. I am tracking down the contacts of Julian Vance's wife. I want her to know exactly what kind of man she is sharing a bed with. I want her to know that her husband is accepting gifts from a woman who built her life on a foundation of deceit. The search is difficult, but I have the time and the resources and the motivation to see this through to the end. Elena thought she could use her perks to buy the loyalty of a cheater while she threw away the man who actually cared for her. She is about to learn that the most expensive flight she ever booked was the one that led me to her secrets. Barcelona is a city of layers and history, and I am peeling back every layer of Elena's life until there is nothing left but the truth. I have spent the last few weeks documenting every lie and every receipt and every contradiction. I have built a dossier that would make a lawyer proud. I am not looking for closure. I am looking for a total social and reputational reset for the people who thought my feelings were a resource to be exploited. The long distance is finally over, but the consequences are just beginning to arrive. I can see the lights of the airport from my balcony, and I know that every plane landing is a reminder that the world is smaller than she thinks. She cannot hide from the facts, and she cannot hide from the man who used to love her, but now only wants justice. The investigation into Julian is yielding results, and the digital trail is getting warmer every day. I think about the wife of the man she helped to cheat, and I feel a strange sense of duty. We are both casualties of the same war. We were both told lies so that they could feel the thrill of a secret connection. I am going to give her the truth like a gift she never asked for but desperately needs. It is the only way to break the cycle. It is the only way to ensure that Elena and Julian understand that their actions have real weight in the real world. The humid air is starting to cool as the night deepens, but my resolve is only getting stronger. The preparation is nearly complete, and the execution will be as swift and as silent as a midnight flight. She asked if I made the right decision, and soon she will have her answer in a way she never expected. I remember the way she used to look at me when she arrived at the terminal in Barcelona. She would smile as if she had no other cares in the world. I now realize that smile was her most effective weapon. It was a mask she wore to hide the fact that she was managing multiple men and multiple narratives. Every kiss was a distraction. Every late-night call was a performance. I invested my time and my money and my heart into a mirage. The Gothic Quarter is full of narrow alleys where it is easy to get lost, but I have finally found my way out. I am looking at the data on my laptop and I see the patterns of their communication. It was not an emergency. It was a planned continuation of an affair that never really ended. I think about the thousands of dollars I spent on flights to see her while she was giving away the free tickets to Julian. The financial exploitation is almost as insulting as the emotional betrayal. She took from me to give to him. She treated my love like a subsidy for her past mistakes. I will not let that stand. I will ensure that every single favor she did for him comes back to haunt them both. I have tracked Julian to a high-end suburban neighborhood where he lives with his wife and 2 daughters. He presents himself as a pillar of the community, but he is just another coward hiding behind a woman's kindness. I am going to strip away that protection. The plan is simple but effective. I am going to present the wife with a complete chronological record of their interactions. I have the dates, I have the flight numbers, I have the texts where Elena admitted to their history and their ongoing connection. I am not going to be angry or aggressive. I am going to be the source of undeniable facts. I want to see the moment the lie collapses. I want to see the moment Elena realizes that she cannot talk her way out of this one. She thought she was the one in control because she had the wings and the travel and the secrets. She forgot that I am the one who knows how to build things that last, and I also know how to tear them down when the foundation is rotten. Barcelona will always be the place where I lost my innocence about her, but it will also be the place where I found my strength. I am standing on the balcony and the city lights are flickering like the lives of the people I am about to expose. There is no turning back now. The research is done, the evidence is verified. The next step is the contact. I will not be the man who was cheated on in a long-distance relationship. I will be the man who brought the truth to the surface. Elena asked if I made the right choice. She is about to find out exactly how right I was. I can picture Julian's wife sitting in her living room. She probably thinks her husband is working late or meeting clients. She has no idea that he is part of a web of deceit that spans continents. I feel for her, but I also know that she deserves to know the reality of her life. I am doing this for both of us. I am doing this to clear the air of the rot that Elena and Julian have allowed to fester. The humid air of Barcelona is finally breaking, and a cool breeze is coming in from the sea. It feels like the start of something new. It feels like justice. I will wait for the perfect moment to send the information. I want to ensure that it cannot be deleted or ignored. I want to ensure that the impact is maximum. This is not about being a victim. This is about being the one who dictates the terms of the engagement. Elena and Julian thought they were the protagonists, but they were just the antagonists in a story that I am now finishing. The wait is almost over. The final piece of the puzzle is in place. The truth is coming, and it will not be silenced by excuses or gaslighting. The preparation for a perfect strike requires a silence that most people find unbearable. I sat in my study in the Unthinkable district with the windows shut against the noise of the city. The digital world is a playground for those who think they are clever, but it is a graveyard for those who are careless. Elena believed her status as a flight attendant gave her a layer of invisibility, but she forgot that every boarding pass and every seat assignment leaves a permanent scar on a server somewhere. I began the process of auditing our entire relationship through the lens of a forensic accountant. I mapped out every one of her layovers against the login records of our shared streaming accounts and the location data she had forgotten to scrub from her cloud storage. The patterns emerged with a sickening clarity. She was not just a woman making a mistake. She was a woman maintaining a dual reality with the efficiency of a high-level project manager. I spent the first week gathering the professional profile of Julian. He was a partner at a boutique firm that specialized in international maritime law, which meant his reputation for integrity was his only real asset. I downloaded the firm's annual reports and their internal code of ethics, which I found archived on a public server. Article 4 was particularly interesting, as it prohibited the acceptance of high-value gifts from third parties that could create a conflict of interest or a reputational risk. A free international flight ticket is a high-value gift. Elena had not just betrayed me, but she had handed me the ammunition to dismantle Julian's career. I spent hours cross-referencing the dates of the tickets she gave him with Julian's public appearances at legal conferences. I found that he had used my tickets to attend events in London and Paris while billing his firm for travel expenses that he never actually incurred. This was not just infidelity, this was fraud. My attention then turned to the wife. Her name was Sarah, and she was a landscape architect with a penchant for posting her work on social media. She had a curated life that looked impenetrable from the outside. I studied her circles and her family connections and the school schedules of her 2 daughters. I was not looking for a way to hurt her, but for the most effective way to wake her up. I created a separate encrypted drive where I organized the evidence into 3 distinct folders titled Communication and Travel and Financials. I included the screenshots of Elena's text messages where she admitted to the long-term nature of their affair and her awareness of his marriage. I included the digital receipts for the flight tickets that were originally promised to me. I even found a series of bank transfers from Elena to a shell account that Julian used for his personal expenses. The depth of her financial investment in this man was staggering. She was working overtime in the sky to fund the lifestyle of a man who wouldn't even leave his wife for her. The humid air of Barcelona seemed to vibrate with the weight of the information I was holding. I spent my nights walking the perimeter of the city, thinking about the mechanics of the exposure. I did not want a messy confrontation in a bar or a screaming match on a doorstep. I wanted a total and silent collapse of their infrastructure. I began to draft the letters. One was for Sarah, and it was written with a cold and clinical precision that removed any room for doubt. I attached the login credentials to a secure cloud folder where she could view the evidence at her own pace. The second letter was for the senior partners at Julian's firm. It was an anonymous tip regarding a breach of ethics and potential financial misconduct. I knew that once the seed of doubt was planted, the firm's internal auditors would do the rest of the work for me. They would find the discrepancies in his expense reports and the paper trail of the gifts. Elena continued to reach out during this period. Her messages transitioned from defensive anger to a desperate kind of nostalgia. She sent photos of us at the beach and told me she missed the way I looked at her. I did not respond. I watched the messages arrive, and I felt nothing but the satisfaction of a hunter who has the target in his sights. Every "I love you" she sent was another piece of evidence of her sociopathy. She was trying to lure me back into the safety of the lie, because she sensed that the silence was a threat. She was right to be afraid. I was no longer the man who bought her flowers and planned her birthday surprises. I was the man who was counting the seconds until her world turned to ash. I spent the second week of my preparation verifying the physical locations. I needed to know exactly where Julian would be when the news broke. I used a private investigator service to confirm his daily routine. He left his house at 8 in the morning and returned at 7 in the evening. He spent his lunch hours at a specific athletic club where the membership was as exclusive as his law firm. I decided that the delivery of the information would happen on a Tuesday because that was the day the firm held its weekly partner meeting. The timing had to be perfect. I wanted the pressure to be applied from all sides simultaneously. Sarah would receive her package at home, while Julian was being called into the boardroom to explain his travel expenses. I sat in a small cafe near the Sagrada Familia and reviewed the dossier one last time. The injustice of the situation still burned, but it was a cold fire now. I thought about the hours I had spent worrying about her safety when she was on long hauls. I thought about the sacrifices I made to ensure our future was secure, while she was literally giving that future away to a man who viewed her as a convenient perk. The betrayal was not just a breach of a romantic contract, but a total violation of my personhood. She had treated my life as a secondary resource for her primary obsession. I closed my laptop and felt a sense of profound clarity. The preparation was finished. The evidence was undeniable, and the delivery mechanisms were in place. I was a shadow in the machine. I looked at the folder containing the screenshots of our final conversation, where she asked if I made the right choice. I added one final note to the dossier, which was a copy of that text. I wanted the wife and the partners to see the level of her arrogance even after the discovery. I wanted them to see that she felt no remorse for the lives she was destroying. The silence in the apartment was absolute. I lay in the dark and mapped out the final sequence of events. First, the emails would be sent to the law firm at 9 in the morning. Then the physical package would be delivered to Sarah's doorstep by a courier at 10. By noon, the internal investigation at the firm would be in full swing. By 2 in the afternoon, Julian would be facing a crisis that no maritime law could solve. And by the time Elena landed from her next flight, she would find that the safety net she had built was gone. She would be alone in a world that finally knew exactly who she was. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming. The hunter had finished his work. The trap was set, and the mechanism was primed. All that remained was the passage of time. The Tuesday morning sun hit the glass towers of the diagonal Mar with a clinical brightness that signaled the end of the shadows. Dominic sat at his kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and the dossier ready to be unleashed. The air was still, and the city of Barcelona was waking up to a day that would change the trajectory of 4 lives forever. He checked the time one last time and saw it was exactly 9 o'clock in the morning. This was the moment the silence of his preparation would transform into the noise of consequences. He moved his cursor to the send button and distributed the encrypted files to the senior partners of the law firm where Julian worked. The emails contained the full record of Julian's unethical acceptance of high-value gifts in the form of international flights, which were documented through the portal receipts Elena had provided. Dominic knew that in the world of maritime law, a partner's integrity was the only currency that mattered, and Julian was about to go bankrupt. The mechanism of the strike was designed to be simultaneous and inescapable. At 10 o'clock, a private courier arrived at the house in the suburbs where Sarah lived with her children. The package was not a bomb, but it contained the truth, which is often more destructive to a household built on lies. Inside was a tablet preloaded with every text exchange between Elena and Julian, and every photo they had shared, and every confirmation of the flights they had taken together. Dominic watched the GPS tracker on the courier's phone and felt a sense of cold justice as the status updated to "delivered." There was no joy in the act, but there was a profound sense of equilibrium being restored to a world that Elena had tilted with her narcissism. He thought about how she had told him he was overreacting and how she had minimized the betrayal as just a ticket. She was about to find out that a single ticket could be the key that unlocked the vault of all her secrets.
By noon, the internal fire at the law firm was already burning out of control. Dominic had included evidence that Julian had billed the firm for travel expenses that he never actually paid for because he was using the free perks Elena gifted him. This moved the situation from a private affair to a corporate crime of embezzlement and fraud. Julian was called into an emergency meeting in the main boardroom while his computer and his phone were seized by the firm's security team. He had spent his career arguing for the rule of law, but he was now the primary evidence in his own downfall. Dominic imagined Julian's face as the senior partners laid out the screenshots of his conversations with Elena, where they mocked the unsuspecting wife and the distant boyfriend. The power dynamic had shifted, and Julian was no longer the hunter, but the prey. Dominic spent the afternoon walking through the narrow streets of the Gothic Quarter, feeling the weight of the last few months finally lifting. He knew that Elena was currently thousands of feet in the air and completely unaware that the ground she intended to land on had been removed. She was serving drinks and smiling at passengers while her entire future was being incinerated in a series of digital exchanges. The injustice of her betrayal had been a heavy burden, but the execution of his plan was the antidote. He thought about the flights they had taken together and the plans they had made for a home in this very city. All of it was a fabrication designed to keep him compliant while she pursued her own selfish ends. He felt no guilt for the destruction he was causing because he was simply revealing the reality that they had created. The fallout for Elena was scheduled for the moment she touched down at El Prat Airport after her long-haul flight. Dominic knew her schedule better than she did, and he had timed the delivery of his final message to coincide with her phone being turned back on after landing. He did not send a long or emotional text. He simply sent a link to a public folder containing all the evidence he had shared with Julian's wife and his law firm. He wanted her to understand in one single moment that her double life was over and that the safety net she had built using Julian was shredded beyond repair. When she turned on her phone, she would see not just his message, but the frantic calls from a husband whose career was ending and the silence of a wife who was already talking to a divorce lawyer. The luxury of the secret was a debt that was now being collected with maximum interest.
Dominic walked down to the beach at Barcelona and watched the planes taking off and landing over the Mediterranean. He felt a lightness that he had not experienced since the day he first discovered the first lie. He remembered how Elena had asked him if he still believed he took the right decision to break up. He finally had the answer that would put an end to her gaslighting forever. The right decision was not just to leave her, but to ensure that the truth was the only thing left standing in the wake of her destruction. He saw a flight descending and knew that Elena was on it and that her world was about to collide with reality in a way that no cockpit warnings could prevent. He was no longer the 34-year-old man who had been deceived, but the architect of a new and honest future. The news of Julian's resignation hit the legal community by the end of the business day. The firm issued a brief statement about a departure due to personal reasons, but the real story was already circulating through the networks of the city. Sarah had changed the locks on the house and had her brother move in to ensure Julian did not return. The marriage that Elena had helped to undermine was finished, and the children would grow up knowing their father was a man of zero character. Elena herself found her perks suspended as the airline began an internal investigation into the misuse of company resources. She had treated the gift of travel as a weapon, and now it had turned back on her to ground her indefinitely. Dominic realized that the most effective revenge is not to lower yourself to their level, but to simply remove the masks they wear and let the world see them as they are. In the evening, Dominic sat at a quiet bar and ordered a drink for himself. He saw a notification on his phone. It was a message from Sarah. It was not a message of thanks, but a simple statement of recognition. She told him that she had suspected something was wrong for years, but she never had the proof to act. She thanked him for the clarity and told him that she was taking her children to stay with her parents. They were both victims of the same two predators, and they had both found a way to survive. Dominic felt a sense of closure that no apology from Elena could ever provide. He had saved himself, and he had given another woman the chance to save herself from a lifetime of being lied to. The cycle of betrayal was broken, and the truth was the only thing that remained. He thought about the future and realized that he was free to build something real now. He was no longer looking over his shoulder or wondering what inconsistencies were hidden in a story. The long-distance relationship was a ghost, and the woman he thought he loved was a character in a fiction she had authored. He had reclaimed his time and his resources, and most importantly, his dignity. The city of Barcelona looked different to him now as the lights of the night began to sparkle. It was no longer a place of hiding, but a place of new beginnings. He finished his drink and walked out into the cool night air, knowing that he had made the only rational and logical choice. The execution was complete, and the justice was absolute. Dominic remembered the first time he had seen the inconsistencies in her story. It was a small thing then, a mere flicker of doubt that he had tried to ignore. He had wanted to believe in the best version of her, because that version made his life feel complete. He now understood that the version he loved was a carefully constructed mask. Elena had spent her career in the air, and she had learned how to manage her image as efficiently as she managed the expectations of her passengers. She was a professional at making people feel comfortable while she was navigating through turbulence they couldn't see. The late-night drinks with colleagues and the hidden calls to Julian were all part of a larger pattern of behavior that was designed to maximize her own pleasure at the expense of others. The investigation at the law firm revealed even more than Dominic had expected. Julian had been using the firm's accounts to pay for hotel rooms where he met Elena during her layovers. He had been double-dipping by claiming travel expenses that were already covered by the free tickets Elena gave him. It was a systematic exploitation of his position and his firm's resources. The partners were furious, and they were moving to strip Julian of his partnership interest and his pension. He was facing a total professional erasure. Dominic felt a grim satisfaction as he read the updates. Julian had thought he was untouchable because of his status and his connections, but he had forgotten that even the tallest towers are built on a foundation of trust. Once that trust is gone, the tower falls. Elena's reaction to the exposure was predictable. She attempted to call Dominic dozens of times, but he had blocked her number and all her social media accounts. He didn't need to hear her excuses or her cries or her attempts to justify the unjustifiable. He had already said everything he needed to say. Her final message to him before he blocked her was a desperate plea for him to think about the years they spent together. It was another attempt to use their history as a shield against her present actions. Dominic didn't fall for it. He knew that those years were also built on lies, and that the person he spent them with didn't actually exist. The silence was his final answer, and it was the most powerful response he could have given. The airline was also moving forward with their disciplinary action against Elena. They had a strict policy against the resale or misuse of employee flight perks, and giving them to a non-family member for the purpose of maintaining an affair was a clear violation. She was facing termination and a permanent ban from the industry. Her career she had built was vanishing as quickly as a vapor trail in the sky. She would no longer be the glamorous flight attendant moving through international airports. She would just be another person looking for a job with a resume that was now a liability. Dominic felt that this was the most appropriate consequence. She had used her professional status to facilitate her betrayals, and now that status was being taken away. As the weeks passed, the dust began to settle. Sarah moved forward with the divorce, and she was awarded full custody of the children and a significant portion of the marital assets. Julian moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city and was seen working as a low-level clerk at a different firm. The transition from partner to clerk was a visible reminder of his fall from grace. Elena disappeared from the social circles of Barcelona and was rumored to have moved back to her parents' house in a different country. The house of cards had collapsed, and the players were scattered to the wind. Dominic remained in the city, but he moved to a different apartment in a different neighborhood. He wanted a fresh start in a place that didn't hold the echoes of her laughter or her lies. He spent his time focusing on his own career and rebuilding the connections he had neglected while he was consumed by his relationship with Elena. He found that the clarity he gained from the experience made him a better decision-maker in all areas of his life. He was no longer afraid of the truth, even when it was painful. He understood that the only way to build anything lasting is to build it on a foundation of honesty. He looked back at the man he was before the breakup, and he felt a sense of compassion for him. That man had been trying his best in a situation that was designed to fail. He was now a stronger and wiser version of himself, and he was ready for whatever the future held. The city of Barcelona continued to be a source of inspiration for him. He loved the way the ancient stone contrasted with the modern glass, and the way the sea always reminded him of the vastness of the world. He realized that Elena was just one person in a city of millions, and her betrayal was just one chapter in a much larger story. He was the author of his own life now, and he was going to make sure the next chapters were worth reading. He stood on his new balcony and looked out at the lights of the city, and he felt a deep sense of peace. The justice he had sought had been served, and the truth had been revealed. The flight was over, and he had finally landed on solid ground. Dominic often thought about the concept of revenge. He had always been told that it was a hollow pursuit and that it would only leave him feeling empty. He found the opposite to be true. The revenge he took was not about causing pain for the sake of pain. It was about accountability. It was about ensuring that people who exploit others are forced to face the consequences of their actions. It was about restoring the balance of power. He felt more whole and more alive than he ever had before. He had stood up for himself and for the truth, and he had come out on the other side with his integrity intact. He started a new project at work that required him to travel to different parts of Europe. He found himself in airports and on planes frequently, but the experience was different now. He saw the flight attendants, and he saw the passengers, and he wondered about the stories they were telling themselves. He was more observant and more cautious, but he was also more appreciative of the genuine connections he encountered. He met a woman in London who was as honest and transparent as Elena was deceptive. They started a relationship that was built on a foundation of mutual respect and clear communication. There were no secrets and no hidden agendas. It was a refreshing change, and it confirmed for him that he had made the right choice to walk away from the toxicity of his past. The dossier he had built remained in a secure location as a reminder of what he was capable of when his back was against the wall. He hoped he would never have to use those skills again, but he was glad he had them. He was a man who knew how to defend his territory and his heart. He was a man who knew the value of the truth. Barcelona was still his home, and he was building a life there that was filled with real meaning and real joy. The shadows were gone, and the light of the truth was shining brightly on his future. He was finally free.